do what they did to the Soviet Union for
you know what? You're right.
Collapse.
Those Vietnamese rice farmers are threatening my freedom in Iowa, and we need to go in and take them out. If we don't take out the Viet Cong, then before you know it, Chairman Mao is gonna rule in DC. Yeah, but what I did is my camera on stream is like this, and so the patches are all gathered here, and now everyone can see my bare walls, my inner sanctum. It's like seeing me nude.
I mean, all right. Anyway, yeah, we did talk on donor box. It was a heated conversation, that's for sure. Hopefully, you can have a more civilized conversation today.
Sure.
Yeah. So to start off with, you know, I got these questions I've written down for you, Mr. Dylan Burns. So in recent times, you know, since we've seen all the protests around the globe that show solidarity with the Palestinians, doesn't that exemplify for you that the people fight l'esprit de corps for the freedom fighters, leftists, humanitarians, and etc., as it was in the Spanish Civil War or the fight against segregation or colonialism in the 60s, is with the Palestinians and not Ukraine, where you have big business interests, intelligence agencies, and the military-industrial complex of big countries fighting each other for supremacy. This is a very common thing back in olden Europe, where one European power fights another for supremacy. England versus Spain, France versus England, France versus Germany, Russia Empire versus Swedish Empire in the Great Northern War. So what I'm trying to say is that the Ukrainian war has all the earmarks of a war of competition between two great powers, two great houses. One is the remnant of the Soviet Empire, the Russian Federation, and the other one is the reigning supreme, the US Empire and its NATO allies. Not a revolutionary war for the liberation of people, their independence, or a great cause like freeing, treating Black people as human beings, or that kind of stuff. Bad, like a people's war.
Yeah, so I guess there would be two things I would say. One, I could apply that same standard easily to the war between Israel and Hamas by just saying Israel is America's ally. America wants an ally in the Middle East as it pivots out, and Hamas is the ally of Iran, who wants to challenge Israel and challenge American power in the region, and therefore the attack on October 7th had nothing to do with the liberation of the Palestinian people, had everything to do with Iran and Hamas furthering their goals against Israel. I can super boil down and make these conflicts really reductive by just talking about kind of the realist worldview, but if we do that, we have to do that equally. We have to say that on the Israeli side, there are obvious state interests for the United States, state interests for Europe, state interests for other powers as well. And on the Palestinian side, whether or not it's genuine or not, the same thing could be true on the other side. There's people who genuinely support Israel. It can also be completely for sectarian or just their own geopolitical means. For example, there are many powers throughout the Middle East that while they'll champion the Palestinian cause, they will not accept them as citizens. They will just use them more as a political pawn and a political tool, or sometimes, as was true with the Fedayeen and as was true today when it comes to the Iranians, as a military tool as well to leverage power against their enemies. That's not to take away from the justness of the Palestinian cause for liberation, but that is to say that we could do what you just did to the Ukrainian conflict easily to the Palestinian conflict, and I can just dismiss it as just power brokers fighting over the scraps of the Palestinian and Israeli people. As for you said the second point, could you repeat? The second point was about the justness of the Ukrainian cause, I think it was, or was there another second point that I'm forgetting?
So let's see. So I just saying that this is not a revolutionary cause for liberation for.
Well, it is a revolution. It absolutely is a revolution. It's a continuation of the Euromaidan, and some could even say the Orange Revolution from 2014, because it was the Euromaidan revolution of 2014 that directly led to the Russian invasion of Crimea in that same year. And the Russian government is very open about that. That Ukraine separating itself from the Ruski Mir, from the Russian world, in Putin's view, is completely unforgivable because Ukraine is an extension of Russia. Therefore, it cannot do that. And that revolution was against the interests of the Russian state. So it was started by a revolution.
Well, I mean, going back to the revolution, I mean, it could be a lot of CIA people were over there. Let's not forget about that.
Okay, I don't care.
Okay, you don't care, but there's intelligence agencies like operating in it. There's intelligence agencies operating it.
Wait, the intelligence wait, say that again. There was intelligence operations. Intelligence operations operating the revolution, the protesters.
There were. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was. I mean, everybody knows there were.
Everybody knows that.
CIA. Look, are you telling me there was no CIA help inside the Euromaidan? All of it was grassroots.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that there was help from maybe the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, to specific NGO groups that did things like corruption, like vigilance, and like election monitors, and different local press groups that covered things, usually corruption, honestly. I've gone through the NED funding. I've tried to find the CIA operation that was being done. From my view, the protesters did exactly what the American government did not want them to do, which was overthrow the Yanukovych regime. They were terrified that if the Yanukovych regime was overthrown, that the Russians, not being willing to tolerate a Ukraine that's breaking with their interests, would invade. Now, I would say that they were right about the Russian side of the interests, but they were also wrong about how number one, probably how brutal Yanukovych was going to get, and number two, what the Ukrainian people were willing to put up with. And so when Victoria Nuland says in this leaked phone call about trying to get the Ukrainian protesters to accept the deal and trying to figure out how we can make some coalition government moving forward and get ready for elections, this was all around the idea that there's not going to be a coup, there's going to be a deal. And then when the deal was pushed, the protesters didn't accept it and they went forward. So either the argument would have to be A, that the CIA had control of the operation, then lost control of the operation. We still haven't been able to find evidence of control of that operation. Or B, which is what I think, America was sympathetic towards the protesters, and America had sent aid to Ukraine in the form of financial assistance, etc. But we have no evidence of CIA involvement in the Euromaidan revolution. I think that when you murder over 100 people, try to outlaw protesting, tie nails and screws to flashbangs to throw it in the crowd, that will be enough to turn the public against you. Not to mention, the whole Euromaidan revolution started over the European Union, and the fact that Yanukovych, after making a promise that Ukraine would join the European Union, at least when it came to visa-free travel and the certain association agreement, he pulled out of it in the middle of the night to suppress protests at the request of Putin, after putting pressure on the border and stopping trade, doing something that the Russians promised in the 90s they wouldn't do. So I think all of that creates enough purpose to get people out on the street against them.
Okay, so two things. Number one, Iran is not a superpower. Yeah, it is of course, it has
regional power. Yeah.
Regional power, but it's not a superpower. And the Palestinians have been fighting way before Iran has came to the scene. So before even
that's true. There were other powers who backed them before then. It could either be Al Nasser, it could be the Jordanians, it could be any number of Middle Eastern powers that I could point to. That. By the way, I don't understand why Iran wanting to have regional hegemony necessarily creates such a moral distinction between the United States and Russia wanting to have more influence in Europe, because one is bigger, therefore it is immoral, but one's smaller, therefore it's okay. Is that the idea?
No, because I would think none of that would have happened. None of the stuff would in Ukraine would happen if there was no infighting between Russia and America. They're trying to basically so the tug of war is between the two powers, and they're using Ukraine as a proxy.
Why do you say that?
If Ukraine didn't want to join NATO or EU, Russia would have been pissed off, and Ukraine would be independent as it was since the 1990s.
You're right that if Ukraine didn't join NATO or the EU and just did what Russia wanted and join its economic agreements and its military alliances, then it probably wouldn't have been invaded. But I could say that about the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. I could say that about any number of big powers coming in, bullying other powers to serve their interests. I could say that without American involvement, due to Russia's historical behavior towards Ukraine before America was a gigantic player in the European scene, for example, during the Russian Empire, or towards the Kazakhs, or towards any of the other powers that Russia touches, any of the other countries that Russia touches, Russia had shown aggressive imperialistic behavior towards them. And so if you take America out of the equation, it could just be instead of, you know, Russia invading Ukraine for, you know, nationalistic reasons, chauvinistic reasons, on top of its fear of NATO, it would just be invading them for the nationalistic reasons, chauvinistic reasons, with no disincentive, no deterrence against their invasion. Because that's what happened with Kazakhstan against the Soviet Union. That's what happened with Armenia. That's what happened with Azerbaijan. That's what happened with all these other countries when the West was too scared to confront the Soviets. They just walked in and took it because no one would stop them. Why would Russia not do the same if Putin truly believes that Ukraine is an extension of Russia and has no right to leave its power broker? I mean, do we say that Ukraine's just forever supposed to serve their interests and there's nothing they can do if they want to liberalize, democratize, tackle corruption, or move away from a kleptocracy?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. But I'm just saying, though, that the situation is different between the Palestinian situation, that it is a more truer, more grassroots revolution, and more, like I said, it represents l'esprit de corps of humanitarians, of freedom fighters, compared to that of Ukraine, which is like, you know, where there's like intelligence agencies, military industrial complex, NATO, and a whole lot. So,
I mean, you could say like it's more grassroots because they have less like international backing by big powers. Is that the reason it's more grassroots? Because I can tell you from my personal experience, I can just be very fine. No, you speak.
Okay. So yeah, like so South Africa was backed by Cuba and the Soviet Union, like not directly, but indirectly was I'm talking about the ANC. I'm not talking about like the apartheid South Africa. And then apartheid South Africa was backed by United States. So in that sense, yeah, both of those two things were backed by superpowers. But nevertheless, though, the cause of freedom, of independence, of getting out of colonialism, that is a much truer sense of a fight for the of people breaking the chains, then it is like what I see in Ukraine, which is a fight more or less about like, hey, look, this is like what Russia did with Sweden, you know, like they brought up allies, they surrounded it, and basically they no longer made it an empire. So that's what I see. Like this is what I've seen like in wars that we have seen like for thousands of years, which is like big powers fighting one another because for their own sakes, to expand their empire and to squash their rivals and etc. And this has been exemplified actually. Have you seen what's the name, Zelensky's speech with to Goldman Sachs? I think. Hold on, I have it over here. Let me just bring it out. How much money is it? So this is from Bloomberg. So they said Zelensky and then the guy from BlackRock, I forgot his name is, and they opened up a 15 billion funding for with JP Morgan and AIG and etc. Funding to build up Ukraine. So already big money interest going in there, and like it's going to be like basically they're going to make trillions of dollars once the war is over, rebuilding Ukraine, and they're going to probably basically own Ukraine. So it's going to be big money.
Trillions of dollars, please, Lord above, I beg you.
So
I'm just going to be honest with you. They're not getting trillions of dollars out after the war. If they can get $100 to $200 billion, it'll be a blessing from God above. As attention drags away from the war, state-backed investment, there's a good chance that it's going to gradually decrease or almost immediately decrease. Really, that's a real possibility because attention from the war is going to go away. There are definitely investment firms that the Ukrainian government wants to get into Ukraine to invest in them, the same ones that any other country that's under the type of bombardment Ukraine would want to get to keep their country afloat. If Russia could get it, the Russians would get it. If Israel could get it, Israel would get it. If Palestine could get it, Palestine would get it. If anyone could get it, they would get it. But let's be clear, they're not going to get trillions of dollars after the war. The budget shortfalls that the Ukrainian government is suffering right now, if it wasn't for this international backing, they would be unable to pay their teachers the bare minimum salaries. In Ukraine right now, teachers are not able to they have to take paid time off, or time off without pay, because if they come to work all the days that they're supposed to, all of their weekdays, the schools will not have enough money to pay them. They don't have enough money to pay pensions. They don't have enough money to pay emergency worker staff a fair wage. They don't have enough money to pay all sorts of things and buy all sorts of things. It's gotten to the point where there were protests in Ukraine about the fact that they're not giving enough money to the war effort, and they need to locate more, and they need to gather more money from international investors. So the idea that money is like awash in Ukraine, that's just not true. And we can say like $1 billion here, $2 billion here, but this is investments that will come in year after year after year. Like when we talk about like a $50 billion investment plan from the European Union, that isn't like one big $50 billion investment. That's $50 billion over 5 or 6 years. And so we're talking about like a few $billion from these investment companies or different European countries having to keep Ukraine afloat, fighting the largest country on the planet, which up until recently was universally considered the second most powerful country on the planet outside of maybe China, but that was a debate until very recently. As for your comment about grassroots resistance, Ukrainian resistance is some of the most grassroots resistance you'll see in the world. It really is. It's just most people don't see it because most of the cameras are on the big companies. Half the patches on these walls are from grassroots civilian organizations that are building drones in their basements, that are coming together to try to fundraise whatever money they can to evacuate animals. Most of it has been grassroots investment. In fact, I would say that the Ukrainian military could not have lasted as long as it has up to this point if it wasn't for that grassroots resistance. Just in the same way that where the Polish government claims a lot of victory for taking in Ukrainian refugees, it was mostly grassroots organizations in Poland that did most of the actual recovery, and the government doesn't really need all that much credit. And so I will tell you right now that grassroots, I believe it's in Ukraine is the second most charitable country when it comes to like contributions in the world because of how much they're donating to military causes, small grassroots foundations. Like, you're just so off base about it not being grassroots.
But as a leftist and as proletariat, do you consider yourself a leftist?
Like, it depends what you mean by leftist. I was invited by this one big YouTuber to like talk about what it means to be a leftist on the internet. And I remember my first question was, am I a leftist? Because I don't openly identify as like a communist, and I don't openly identify as a socialist. I mean, the closest you can get me to a socialist would be social democrat, which who believes as a socialist depends on who you're talking to. So I consider myself left-wing, but I'm not a Marxist.
Okay, now that have to be a Marxist. Do you consider yourself part of the working class, the common people? Do you and looking out for their interest?
Currently, right now, I'm technically a business owner. Because I own a small business. I'm not very profitable. Most of my money goes back into the business. But I came from a working class background. My grandfather was a steel worker, then a machinist. My grandmother a cook. My mother homeless. So I would say I came from generally working class American roots. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, a restaurant owner can become a business owner too, or either a farmer too. It doesn't mean that they're elite. That's not what the dividing line is. But I'm just saying though that do you consider yourself part of the common people? Like not common people. That sounds.
What does that even? What does that even mean? The common people.
The common people. Okay, so there's the elites. Yeah, there's the elites.
The elites.
Yeah, there's the elites.
Those elites, those vague elites controlling with their eliteness out there. What's the elite? I asked you what common people are, and then you responded with an equally vague term. Well, you know the elites, right? Well, who are the elites? Are they the Jews? Are they the capitalists? Are they the Armenians? Like, I don't know who the elites are. I bet they're the Armenians.
No, elites are the people in power, the people in charge, whether it's the corporation, the billionaires, your Elon Musk.
Political leaders.
Political leaders. That's kind of people, yeah. So people with power, people with that move and shake the world.
Movers and shakers.
There are those, movers and shakers. Your BlackRocks. There are those people, and then there's the security people, the people that the managerial class, the soldier class, and I think there's the little guy. And where do you? That's what the proletariat. Yeah, your little guy. Look, it doesn't sound nice anyway. You put it, but yeah. Look, I mean, where do you stack up, and where do you see yourself in the dividing of the classes?
So I'm gonna start with, I really don't like grand overarching narratives just generally, because immediately once I hear like a grand overarching narrative, I get really suspicious that you found like the very super like easy to like dividing lines. But if you were to I'm a very pro union guy. I interned with unions. I support unions. Both my grandparents were union members, and that were able to get me, decent food on my table. So I would say that I'm generally pro worker. But that doesn't mean I want to go like seize all the means of production. But I'm definitely a pro worker.
Okay, so as a pro worker guy, like, isn't it strange that if you're you're for the people and for the workers and etc., you ally yourself with the Black Rocks and NATO and the military-industrial complex, and so there's foreign legions going fighting for them in Ukraine.
I'm friends with any of those guys. Good guys, mostly.
Yeah, well, why isn't there no foreign legion fighting for Palestine? Actually, there should be a foreign legion fighting for Palestine. You don't think there should be a foreign legion fighting for Palestine?
I mean, like, in an ideal world, but I think, number one, it's because Palestine is, Gaza specifically is under complete blockade. They have some foreign fighters. It's just a lot of them.
Where?
Some of them are Iranian. Some of them are.
I don't even think they're in there, but yeah.
Syrian. Some of them are Lebanese, but it's like mostly like a lot of Hezbollah recruitees. But like, I understand like the idea that they can't get into Gaza, but I think in large part, like, Palestine has a lot of support in the international community. If they weren't under blockade, maybe people would be getting in. Ukraine has been able to keep its border open, has been able to keep its port open with force when nobody thought they would be able to. And so, like, international fighters have been able to get in. It's part of the reason why the war hasn't gotten even worse than it has gone. But, I don't understand where all this is going to, because if the point is, Dylan, don't you see? You're in the room with Mr. Raytheon, Mr. Bomb, Mr. Selling of the Gun. Isn't that bad? Then I could easily respond that it was General Motors that curb stomped the Nazis. It was American companies that curb stomped Mussolini before the Italians took care of the rest, made him into a little piñata. But these companies we had to ally because they were who we had to ally with, because they were the people in power. And so if there is a struggle that is worth struggling over, or a cause that's worth fighting for, you have the allies that are around you, not the allies you necessarily want. Would I much rather be going into Ukraine with Mr. Rogers and, John Brown himself and like all my favorite authors and, Superman? Yeah, of course. But those are not the options. The options are Raytheon. The options are General Dynamics. The options are, Northrop Grumman. These are the options because these are the big companies that are left from all of the defense industries coalescing and combining after the Cold War spending went down and all the other companies couldn't make it anymore. And so and let me just tell you something. In Iran, there is a military-industrial complex. In Russia, there is a military-industrial complex. And every country in the world, definitely anyone of big influence in the world that we talk about frequently, Russia, China, etc., there are military-industrial complexes who have perverse incentives when interacting with the world. The Russians were known as some of the biggest arms exporter in the world until recent events made it so they didn't have many more guns to sell because they were preoccupied with those guns. So, if this is the case, I'm going to look at every war that's ever happened and said, the defense companies, they're the real beneficiaries. I think we should judge it on its merits, not based on how mean the people you're in the room are. The people you're with in the room are.
Well, number one, it shows that that's basically modern day warfare. Back in the day as well, it was monopolized, but in somewhere between, between the French Revolution and 1960s, 1970s. There were wars that were like revolutionary wars that were started by militias and paramilitary forces that were good, not perfect, but that were good. And so, for example, the Spanish Civil War. A lot of those people as volunteers, of course, Stalin was supporting a little bit, but not that much. But those were grassroots that started up, and a lot of the anarchist communist movements. There were so many of them. The International Brigade, and and it was pure. I wouldn't say
it was pure.
Pure as in the sense.
Let me be clear. This is bullshit. Okay, they massacred priests. They had horrible torture centers. They were not pure any more than any other revolution is pure, right? They had
pure as in the sense that their arms and, like, what do you call it? Not everything was monopolized. Violence was monopolized by the big power. So this was when the time that violence was taken over by the little guy and by the people, and they said, like, hey, we have the
how did Ukrainian resistance begin to the Russian invasion? Did it start from a centralized government authority in Kiev, and that they gathered this mighty army in 2014 to push the Russians back? Or was it mostly civilian militias that gathered together once they realized how unbelievably corrupt the military was, how much fuel was being stolen, how little training a lot of the soldiers had? I mean, they maybe had 16,000 effective soldiers that they had to go to war with the biggest country on the planet with a massive demographic and weapons and everything advantage after they gave them, that country, their nuclear arsenal at the behest of the international community. So what happened? A bunch of grassroots organizations, many of them from the Euromaidan protests, came together and picked up rifles.
Don't forget neo-Nazis. Yeah. Don't forget the neo-Nazis.
Yeah, neo-Nazis on the Russian and Ukrainian side went out there as well as anarchists, as well as everyday working people. And as time has gone on, the most prominent forces in the Ukrainian army are not the fascists. They are everyday working class Ukrainians, as more and more and more have been mobilized. But it started as grassroots. It started as a grassroots movement that you deny.
Yeah, because I don't think you can overthrow a government like that so easily. Victoria Nuland,
so easily.
John McCain. So
how many governments have you overthrown?
How many? Zero.
Okay. How many had to die for it to be a real revolution? Because if I remember correctly, in Latvia it was 6 at the collapse of the Soviet Union. In Lithuania, it was 21 who died.
Dude, it was collapsing, for crying out loud. The empire was collapsing. That is a no-brainer. The empire was collapsing to begin with. It's not because the people were so strong that they overtook the power. Like when the Soviet Empire was so powerful.
So okay, if 21 is not enough, how many people have to die for it to be like, oh, okay, they were seriously tried to stop them?
Look, when the Soviet power was not collapsing, when it was more powerful, when Hungary and the Czech Republic tried to rebel against them.
By the way, can I just say, I think now we're at the death toll of like 400, 500, 600,000 dead, right? In the Ukrainian war. We have or dead, injured, casualty. You get the idea. A very high number of people who are dead and injured. So I would say that the result of the Euromaidan revolution, or specifically the violent response to the Euromaidan revolution, has killed quite a significant amount of people. And before that, there were the Heavenly 100 who were shot and killed. There were others that were killed in the street. Let's not even talk about all the beatings and all the abuses that were done towards the protesters for months and months and months at a time. I mean, Euromaidan wasn't just like a flash in the pan. It took months and months and months of pressure. And so the idea of, oh, they fell so easily. They fell after months of pressure from the government just being unable to stop protests after murdering 100 people, trying to outlaw protests, making it so not more than 3 people could gather. That didn't work either. They tried hiring gangs, literal street gangs. Could you imagine Joe Biden hiring MS-13 to go put down, like, protests? That's what the Ukrainian government did. And none of these worked. And then the revolution happened. So what more would have had to happen for you to be like, okay, that's enough violence? Would it have to be like 1,000 dead, 2,000 dead?
I wouldn't think they would have the balls or the capacity to do that without the support of a bigger power outside. So that is all I'm.
But that wait. So what you're talking about is what you're talking about is not a capacity to not do it. What you're implying is that they've always had the capacity to do it. It's a question of confidence. Do they have the confidence to do it, knowing the consequences? But again, the leaked Victoria Nuland phone call indicates clearly that the American government was not all on board with some revolution. It was the Ukrainians themselves that did the revolution without asking anyone else, or in this case, disregarding American demands.
5 has donated $5.
Victoria Nuland, I think she wanted Viktor Yanukovych to basically switch sides himself. He stays in power, but he goes to the American side. He didn't want to do that. I think that's why. And then the people also didn't wanted to seem like that. So he had to go. Sooner or later, he had to go, and he himself saw that he had to go. So he left. He took the money and he left to Russia. So that was the thing, that they wanted him himself to switch sides and then say, "Hey, look."
Yeah, but the
now I'm for EU.
Ukrainians had no interest in it because they didn't like Yanukovych because he murdered over 100 protesters, student protesters on the street. If you talk to Euromaidan protesters, if you talk to people who were there, for them, the moment that the government had crossed the line was the first moment was when they abused student protesters who had came out in the middle of the night after they abused all confidence in the people by retracting his campaign promises to join the European Association Agreement and then doing it in the middle of the night. Could you imagine if in the middle of the night Obama was like, abortion is banned. I know I promised to protect it, but psych. And then protests were out, and then he responded by throwing flashbangs with nails tied to him into the crowd. I mean, yeah, like if Obama did that, we'd have the biggest conservative protests in American history in DC. And then he does what? Hire MS-13 to put them down? I think maybe it's hard for you to see the anger because you weren't there. I guess it'd be also hard for me to exactly see the anger, even after talking to the people, because I wasn't there. But those people getting shot in the street had an impact. It had an impact on the psyche. I mean, in Kazakhstan, in Lithuania, in Latvia, and so many different countries, the brutalizing of protesters becomes a red line that spurs national liberation struggles.
Got you. But I don't think we're going to agree on that one. But
no, I don't.
Like moving on. Don't agree to disagree. Moving on. So recently, what it's shown like hypocrisies of the West. With have you heard of France going to New Caledonia to because people were asking for independence?
Vaguely.
And
vaguely.
Yeah. So basically, it's a colony of France as well. France has plenty of colonies, tiny little nations. Most of them islands, I think, in the Caribbean, Africa. And this is in, I think, close to Australia. What is it, Oceania? I don't know. Like my geography isn't that good either. But so yeah, New Caledonia, like there were some protests because some new voting rights laws and the French they put on the colony, and then so they sent in troops. So which is fucked up. So they were criticizing Putin for sending in troops into Ukraine, and now they're sending in troops into New Caledonia. And what is happening in Gaza too, and them and Germany sending, I don't know.
I don't think that's exactly. I don't think that's exactly the same. But okay, let me
finish. Let me finish. So, and what is happening in Gaza too, which is I think if you want to call it genocide, it's definitely an ethnic cleansing. 300 million from Germany. Other countries, also Italy sending some, Britain sending some as well, all NATO countries. USA sending, I don't know, 3 or 4 billions. So them talking about freedom, them talking about the people, this, the right to self-determination, all that nonsense. And then, France sending his troops to New Caledonia to squash their independence movement. And the rest of the Western world is arming and supporting Israel in its campaign of ethnic cleansing. With that hypocrisy does not show that the West should not be trusted, and moreover, that should not show that USA should not rule alone, not be the sole supreme superpower. Because if the Soviet Union was alive right now, I don't think the Gaza situation would have happened.
That's true. They just bombed Gaza harder. Joseph Stalin was a lover. He loved Israel. It was Joseph Stalin who was the first international leader in the Soviet Union to recognize Israel. I guess it would depend on which year it was that the Soviet Union would get either behind Israel or behind Palestine.
The terrorists do not.
That's what I think, that because it wouldn't happen this way. Because look, number one, Israel is a friend of America.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. Was there a question attached to it? Was the question like, is American hegemony bad? Okay, so first on like the New Caledonia thing, I don't know enough about it to comment on it too much. But as far as I'm aware, I don't need you to explain it to me because I've heard you explain topics to me before, and I didn't really like it. Okay. From what I saw, they've had multiple referendums in the past, and while they were close, they didn't decide that they were going to be free. And so they're going to have another referendum, I think, in like 2 years or something. And so the question is whether or not these people who have, started this, you call it revolution, call it a riot. I haven't really seen like demands outside of like France leaving at the moment. That the idea is that instead of having another referendum in 2 years, we're going to, violently take over the country now. Now, you can argue that that's their will to do that, but I'll also just throw out there that there's also a massive difference between an invasion of Ukraine to take over the country and install a puppet government, and being able to elect your own representatives, having large degrees of autonomy, and being able to vote in French presidential elections that are real and not fake, by the way, real elections that actually have an impact. I would say that these things are substantially different. For example, do you think if Russia invaded Ukraine and took it over, they would allow annual votes to decide if Ukraine wanted to go its own way, join NATO, and join the EU? Would that be I'm not saying... By the way, again, I don't know enough about this. I'm sure you could sit me down there and you can get me to hate the French, okay? It's really easy. I'm a Yankee. We don't like a lot of Europeans. But what I am saying is that it's not exactly the same thing, is it? And again, I don't want to downplay or hurt any of these independence movements or whatever, because I don't know enough about them. But I think that with Ukraine, I hear comparisons to Ireland sometimes, I hear comparisons to Palestine, I hear comparisons to all these other things. I think most of these comparisons end up muddying the water more than they end up giving us clarity about what the similarities are and clearing up the situation.
No, but it just shows hypocrisy, though. It shows hypocrisy.
But if the question is about hypocrisy, now that I've finished your opinion on that, if it's just hypocrisy, then yeah, I do agree that America is hypocritical. It's one of my main critiques about American leadership on the world stage, is that the hypocrisy of American leadership on the world stage will undermine support for American either hegemony or American dominance, whatever you want to call it, on the world stage, because people are going to see the fact that when it comes to self-determination, while the United States talks a big game on Palestine, it's unwilling to really wrangle the Israelis in order to achieve self-determination, either at this moment or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Now, there were certain instances where they tried hard, but I don't think the government tries enough, and I think the government has enabled Israel in many instances too much. But I can acknowledge that hypocrisy and also still support Ukraine, because I would advocate for a different policy. So I would say, yeah, there's hypocrisy in the United States, just as there's hypocrisy in China, just as there's hypocrisy in Russia. If we could talk about the specifics of those differences in hypocrisy, we can. But specifically on the idea that Americans should be the only power in the world, I don't really like that idea. But I also don't think it should be Russia or China either.
No, I know. I'm not advocating for other superpowers either. But I'm just saying, though, that they are the sole superpower. I'm advocating that, at least there should be a balance of superpower. And I think more people, I'm advocating for the power of the people. For the power of the people, for the power of the common man, the proletariat.
Yeah, but to be clear, none of those other powers are going to advocate for the power of the people, the power of proletariat. No, the Russians don't care. The Chinese don't care. Every other power does not care about the power of the proletariat. And so if the idea is by having more competition is going to enable the power of the proletariat, I think it can empower specific countries. I think, for example, if America's aggressing upon some state, and it's not supposed to be because it's immoral, we want to exploit it, etc., and another country comes in to back that state up, I think that's different countries gathering together, almost circling the wagons in defense of that country. I think that can be a good thing. I think that can be a fantastic thing. But I don't think that this is going to, and I've talked to other Marxists that believe this, that it's going to inspire some workers' revolution or revolt. I think it could bring another age of Cold War-esque civil wars, coups, etc., stuff like that. I think that it could maybe empower some countries more, but at no point does that make me want to disregard America's allies like Ukraine, Taiwan, etc. That would just be an acknowledgement that America should not be able to run roughshod on the whole world. The rest of the world should have a say. In my world, if I was crafting this perfect, world in the sky, fruit and nonsense that I'm never going to achieve, at least not in my lifetime, I would want a stronger international body with hard power backing to be able to mediate disputes, decide disputes, and enforce disputes. So when there's a question of, for example, control of the Scarborough Shoal, there isn't a decision, and then the bigger power just says, I don't care about this, and screw the international institution. That's why I also think the United States should join the International Criminal Court, which we signed, but we never formally joined because we never got Senate approval. I think that's hypocritical, and I think we should fall under the jurisdiction, especially if we're asking for Russia to fall under the jurisdiction and we're going to assist the ICJ in going after the Russians. We need to stop being so hypocritical. I agree with that.
No, but my point, thank you for acknowledging that. But my point is, for example, when I was talking about the Gaza, the Gaza situation would not happen as it is today if the Soviet Union was as powerful as it was today. Like, it was not the Russian Federation, it was the Soviet Union, because Egypt would say, hey, look, fuck you, I'm going to join the Soviet side if you don't stop Israel right now. UAE will probably say that. Other countries will probably say that. Look,
maybe.
Yeah, like, I mean, not maybe, of course. And then
maybe because like the Soviet Union was around in 1967. The Soviet Union was around in 1973. The Soviet Union was around during every major Israeli war that you're taught about as the basics, outside of like the invasion of southern Lebanon. And each time they were indecisive in deciding the out. In fact, in one case, when it got the Egyptians involved, the Soviets were counterproductive for giving them false intel about what the Israelis were about to do, and that hurt the Palestinian movement. That hurt the Egyptian defense. But I mean, like, I just am not so positive that if the Soviet Union was still around, that the Palestinians would necessarily be in a better position. Not to mention, maybe the Palestinians could be in a better position, but that would also mean that a lot of other people would probably be in a worse position, depending on what form the Soviet Union took, whether it was a much more reformed Soviet Union, if it was a Soviet Union that cracked down on reforms and was more brutal. I mean, we're talking about alternative history here, and it's all gets pretty blurry.
No, like, because there's two competing superpowers, So if, like, for example, in the Yom Kippur War, Egypt was supplied by the Soviet Union, and that's why it was brazen enough to invade Israel. Yeah, it was brazen enough because they had the support of the Soviet Union. And then
who won that war?
Who the hell knows? But like, politically, I guess it became peace, and I think it was a stalemate. But I think
what happened to the leader of Egypt after the war was done?
I mean, that was like several years after the war was done.
Yeah, but what happened to him? He was
assassinated.
Oh, okay.
He was assassinated.
Why was he assassinated?
Many reasons. Number one, because he was a secularist. Number two, because he signed a peace deal with Israel.
With Israel, okay.
And
gotcha.
Yeah. And same thing on the other side as well. Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, but not because of the one with Anwar Sadat, but because of the Oslo Accords. I think Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated because he shook the hand of made peace with Yasser Arafat.
Got you. So you think that if this war was going on right now and the Soviet Union was still around, then they would be backing one of the powers, and they would be invading Israel and fighting back right now?
No, because they would their allies, for example, Egypt and other Arab countries, will get so pissed off because of all the dead that is going on right now. They would say, "Look, I know we're allies, but that's why, Egypt was pissed off with the Soviet Union. That's why they joined America, and that just basically changed the whole game." So,
what motivation would Egypt have in invading Israel?
No, it wouldn't invade Israel right now. It would have joined the Soviet Union. If it was what was happening.
It would join Egypt would join the Soviet. It would become a Soviet republic.
Like it was before, before it joined the American, because under Nasser was the Soviet Republic. Under Anwar Sadat, which was
and then the Soviet Union would invade Israel.
No, they wouldn't invade Israel, but you know what I'm trying to talk about.
Unironically, I don't.
They would switch sides. America would lose allies to the Soviet Union. There's no allies to join with right now because America is reigning supreme right now in Middle East, and there's no other country.
No, they could go join Iran.
Iran is not a counterweight to the United States. Like the amount of money that America, how many money that. I mean, come on. So Egypt.
Well, no, Egypt. Well, the problem is Iran has one area of interest, and that interest is the Middle East. Iran is not gonna. It doesn't have to invest resources in fielding ships in China near Chinese, near the Chinese coast. They don't need to invest in defense shipments to Ukraine, or indirectly. The Iranians do help bomb Ukrainian cities indirectly, but outside of that, the Iranians have one area of focus, so they can focus the entirety of their efforts in facilitating their militias and their armed groups throughout the Middle East. And the United States has to focus on basically the entire world. So I will say that while 1-to-1, Iran could not beat the United States, but with America's divided attention, the contest at least becomes more fair.
But if you're the Egyptian military dictatorship, or if you're the other Saudis or the Qataris and etc., you get lucrative relationships during the United States. They open up the door for you, the whole world, trading in London, trading, basically a lot of the big buildings here are owned by Qataris in London. At how much, I don't know how much money like Egypt gets from USA, 3 billion a year, something like that. Yeah, 3 billion a year. F-16 jets, whatever. So you join the side with Iran. Good luck, man. Like you're going to get sanctioned. You're going to get impoverished.
I mean, like, how could we assume that, like, okay, so even if the Soviet Union was at a certain point almost bound to collapse, it didn't really have support in many of the republics. It didn't have it in Romania, didn't have it in Ukraine, didn't have it in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, didn't have it in a bunch of countries. That's why they went down, chopped a bunch of people, then got thrown out of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, other countries as well. I believe it was Kazakhstan. Like, so they were collapsing.
Do you think everybody in the American Empire supports the American Empire?
Do I believe no, I don't believe that. But I don't know what that was supposed to indicate about my point.
The point is, like, they fell apart for many reasons, like economics and etc. Not because people were like, of course, like not.
Well, no, they were very unpopular. I mean, it depends which part of the country you're in. Like, if you're in Moscow, it probably has a lot more popularity. If you were in, say, Lithuania, you probably had very, very much less popularity. It depends on which countries. But if the idea was the Soviet Union with all the influence that you're talking about enough to challenge the United States, it would probably need those republics. And so if it wanted to, like, are we saying that if the Soviet Union stayed around but it gave up all these republics, like the Soviet Union was, like, are we just talking about a scenario where Chernobyl didn't happen, where they won the war in Afghanistan, where they didn't have all these problems? Because if your equation is just if there was another power who could benefit from backing the Palestinians, would they? Then it's a yes. But number one, yes, I don't know if the Soviet Union would be the one to do that. Number two, the Soviet Union had so many problems that even if it was to survive into 2024, like, how would we know what state it would be in? Would it be in a position where it even could support Egypt in a war against Israel with American financing? Definitely in the 90s was ultra dominant, and it's still dominant. So if your question is if there was somebody who could be in Palestine's corner, would that be better? My answer is yes. Now the question would be what Palestinian faction, who should be those people? Like, that's a different question, but yes, I do think there should be people giving Palestine leverage in negotiations, because I don't believe that the Israeli government is negotiating in good faith, and I don't even think they want a Palestinian state.
Yeah, my whole point is that America being the sole superpower as it is today, the sole reigning supreme superpower that is reigning today, is causing a lot of problems, especially right now what we see in Gaza. If the United States wasn't the reigning supreme superpower and there was another superpower out there, Israel wouldn't be so brazen and doing this shit, because the other Arab countries
can I tell you something sad? There's a possibility that America drops all support for Israel. Like, this is very small, but let's say that happens, then Russia just replaces America, and then they're going to be the ones selling weapons to Israel. People don't think that's possible. It's 100% possible. Russia and Benjamin Netanyahu had a very
Jews, well,
not
Russian Jews.
Not really the Russian Jews. It's that Netanyahu and Putin has had a pretty productive relationship for much of their career, and the Israelis and the Russians were able to be, let's just say, communicative enough that they didn't mess with each other in Syria. America wasn't able to go in Syria and bomb shit. That could have caused a confrontation. That would have, I mean, it was a big issue in the United States. The Israelis can. The Israelis have been bombing Syria like nonstop for the last, like, well, ever since the beginning of the Civil War. And the Russians have allowed it. And the Russians have allowed it because they have a semi-productive relationship. They've bought Russian war product. My point is, if you're the Russians and America leaves the equation, who do you actually get more benefit from supporting? The state with nuclear power, a semi-competent intelligence agency, one of the only militaries in the Middle East that can pretty consistently at least win land wars, maybe not guerrilla wars, but land wars, pretty competent, good armed forces, generally speaking, when it comes to quality. What would benefit them more? Or, the Palestinian divided states, which is not even a united state, but divided and interspaced with checkpoints. My point isn't talking about the quality of the justness of the Palestinian cause, which we agree in that it's a just cause. My point is the idea that this other power would even necessarily back the Palestinians and not the Israelis if it was more beneficial. I would point to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union flip-flopped on who they supported too. We talked about this earlier. So I agree that there could be a scenario where somebody backing Palestine is better, and I agree with that. But I also don't necessarily agree that if the Soviet Union was still around, that necessarily they'd be backing Palestine, or that if the United States was to drop support for Israel, that Israel would all of a sudden have to like get on its knees and be like, okay, let's make a deal. I think there's a good chance somebody else just fills the power vacuum because it would benefit them.
Well, nobody. I mean, but there will be nobody like with that special relationship that we have with Israel. I mean, like our relationship is very.
Are you American?
Yeah.
I thought you were Irish.
I live in Ireland, but like I'm American. But yeah, there's nobody else with our special relationship that we have with Israel, like with AIPAC and the history and all sorts of stuff that we just like it's a symbiotic relationship. It's a very symbiotic, very close. I don't think they would have that with the Russians or the Chinese. Or
I mean, I don't think it would be as like weirdly like religious as the relationship is the United States and Israel. I don't think it'd be well, no, I don't think it'd be the same. It'd be a different relationship. But I mean, I could easily see Vladimir Putin coming to Israel, playing up the fact that, wow, look, there's so many Russians here. And I mean, Netanyahu used to have posters of him and Putin that he would display in order to try to give up. All I'm saying is that if American support was to end, I don't necessarily think that would be the end of the question. I think there's a good reason to believe that this government would just reposition itself. It would, and it balance itself, try to get different powers to support them. Maybe it would be enough to make them accept some sort of a deal. Maybe that would be my hope. But do we think Ben Gvir is going to say, okay, fine, Palestinian state? Do either of us think that?
No, but I would think that the real politic on the ground would force them to do that, because look, we lost our biggest support. I don't know how many billions of dollars they get every year, $3 billion, and then now I guess they're getting $10 billion or something. Maybe. Like that. Yeah. I
mean, we've stopped the sale of offensive weapons. That hasn't seemed to stop it. Maybe if we stop the sale of the Iron Dome stuff as well, I mean, the aid of Iron Dome stuff as well, that'll stop it. I don't know. The majority of Israelis want to continue the operation to completion, whatever that means.
Yeah, of course, these are unreasonable people. I would think the Zionists are unreasonable people. They are zealots, like as compared to Iran, or maybe even more.
Well, I mean, it depends on the Zionists. I mean, some of them certainly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them.
The state in general, like it is very zealot, and as we've seen the story with the red cows. Yeah, they're buying red cows from Texas. Because I don't know, like there's this end of days prophecy where the Dome of the Rock is going to fall. Yeah, I mean, it is. I
guess my ultimate point to you would be, how during the Cold War, that's when the Nakba happened, and then that's also when the other wars happened that did not end well for the Palestinians. When there was this other power that could possibly back them, so all I'm saying is okay, it's possible that them having someone in the corner would help them. I would advocate to get different countries in their corner, advocate on their behalf, get them full voting rights, get them a state, all that I'd advocate for. I just don't think that we should end up propping up any extremely authoritarian empire under the hope that maybe by propping that empire up, they will eventually back the Palestinians, which will then reap benefits for them while trampling on the bones of many other people.
No, my whole point is that there should not be one reigning superpower, because I like absolute power absolutely corrupts. I think I'm not a. Yeah, there will always be empires, but hopefully not. But
we agree in principle. It's just we probably disagree about what system we should transfer into. Because I don't want to transfer into a system that's okay, now the Russians and Americans have equal power. Because I think the Russians are absolutely god-awful. I think they're one of the worst options possible for either a global hegemon, but even a regional hegemon. And we could disagree about the specifics. I'd want to transfer it to a system that was more institutionalized globally, because I'm I'm a liberal internationalist, if you want to put an IR label on anything I am. But I mean, that would be something we could maybe talk about on another day, because I don't know how much you would want to get into IR specifics.
Okay, good. All right, let me go into different thing. All right, so last time we spoke, you said this is not an existential threat to Russia, that Russia should be fine and just, if it goes back of the border and lose one of its most important naval bases,
Labor base? Wait, what do you mean is one of its most important labor bases? What do you mean?
Naval bases.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it'll be fine if it loses Crimea. But I mean, like, it didn't have to even make this a question. It could have just negotiated with the government back in 2014. It chose not to.
But however, like, between the rhetoric that's been shown, right? Like, let me just check this. Says there is an article saying "Decolonize Russia" by the Atlantic by Casey Michael. To avoid more senseless bloodshed, the Kremlin must lose what empire still remains. BBC Radio 4, decolonize Russia. Is Russia the last empire? No, it's not, but is its invasion of Ukraine colonial war. Calls to decolonize Russia is growing, but what would that mean? There's a quote from Hillary Clinton as well, former, and she's like saying we should do the same thing what happened in Afghanistan. And you remember what happened then? And she said that with glee. Former police leader Lech, I don't know how to say that, Walsa, calls for the West to reduce Russian population from 100 something to 50 million, saying breaking up the country would ensure world security. And there's also a group, I don't know if you know them, Free Nations of a Post-Russia Forum. They're based in Poland. They're basically host of
yeah, like I understand the ideological tint because I've interviewed soldiers who believe this. So
yeah, I mean, and there's groups as well, like, they have maps.
I agree with some of them. I disagree with other ones about like how radical some of these proposals are. Like, I don't believe the Russians need Chechnya. I don't believe the Russians really need Dagestan. I don't believe that the way that they've treated many of the people in Siberia or the Urals or many of the people under their rule, whether it was the destruction of reindeer herding culture, whether it was the forcing of many children, part of Asiatic tribes, to be forcing them into boarding schools. Like, these were policies that compounded over year, trying to engage in cultural erasure that annihilated these communities to the point where even an independence movement seems almost like fantastical. And like, these are like nations that in principle, I think they should have a right to rule themselves. But it's a question about like practicality of a revolt of like 7,000 to 8,000 like reindeer herders against the Russian Federation. It's just not practical. But when it comes to stuff like South Ossetia, Abkhazia, Chechnya, and Dagestan, yeah, I think those are countries that they should have the right to rule themselves. I feel this way principally about many areas and nationalities that are under the Russian banner right now. I just also understand like what's practical, what isn't practical, what would be fair, what's in reality. You have to deal with reality on reality's terms. I mean, I know in the Kalushki regiment, those are Belarusians that are fighting in Ukraine. Their phrase is first Ukraine, then Belarus, because they believe that the Ukrainian independence struggle is an extension of their struggle against the Lukashenko regime. So, I mean, I agree with some of their sentiments, not their most radical sentiments, either just from a practical standpoint of nuclear nonproliferation or from the standpoint of just practicality of like liberating these peoples, or the fact that many of these peoples, if you were to have a straight up or down vote, probably wouldn't even necessarily vote for independence. It's hard to say because the Russian government would stifle even a conversation about the matter, and all of the like resistance movements have all their leaders executed and arrested. But I mean, I think it's a conversation that's morally worth having, but obviously it terrifies the Russians.
No, but my point is that this is an existential threat to Russia because...
Yeah, but America doesn't want that. That's the last thing America wants.
Hillary Clinton said it.
I don't care if Hillary Clinton said it. That's not what the American State Department wants. Like, she might mean that about Chechnya or Dagestan. I have perfectly good idea about what they want because I grew up in Maryland. I grew up with the blue bloods and the feds. I got fed in my blood. They are terrified of the idea of the Russian government really breaking apart. When the Wagner coup happened, or Wagner mutiny, I think mutiny is probably more technical, more specific, but people call it the Wagner coup, so the Wagner coup, whatever they call it. When that happened, the American government told the Ukrainians, don't pull anything. Don't do anything. Don't try to take advantage of it. Don't. And the reason why is, I think in large part, they were terrified of governmental collapse. They might like the idea of chaos making the Russians pull out of Ukraine. They might like the idea of the Russians face planting and becoming weaker. But if the Russian government collapses, then the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet is now stateless. And it's between the largest country on the planet at the same time. This is part of the reason why the American government negotiated to get Ukrainian nuclear weapons and Kazakh nuclear weapons transferred over to Russia, even though many of these nuclear weapons were worked on and maintained by Ukrainian scientists and developed by Ukrainian scientists. And it was on their territory. For all intents and purposes, these should be Ukrainian nukes, but we were scared of it being over so many countries, so we concentrated them. So for that reason alone, the American government is terrified of collapse. And if they do want collapse, they're very bad at pursuing it. They still don't give the Ukrainians approval to bomb Russian territory with American ATACMS, even as the Russians gather forces in Kharkiv, cross the border, and the Ukrainians are saying, we know where they're gathering. We could kill them right now. And the American government says no, because they don't want to cross that line. They don't want to create that possibility. I think it's possibly, depending on whether you think they're faking or not, why they're discouraging the Ukrainians from attacking oil refineries. Because if the Russian government actually gets into a position where, especially if the oil export terminals get targeted, that they won't be able to fund the war effort or the state itself. And then you could get like state collapse. I think that they like the idea of a liberal Russia. I think they like the idea of a weak Russia if it is not a liberal Russia. But I don't think they like the idea of a destroyed Russia with its nuclear weapons strewn about the largest country in the world.
I mean, all they can do is just come and buy it out. I mean, that's simpler than just facing Russia, isn't it? Like, but
do you think that gathering the largest nuclear arsenal in the world across the largest country in the world, which could possibly be in the midst of civil war, is going to be simple? Western intervention during the Russian Civil War failed miserably. They got kicked out of the war because their white army allies, failed. I mean, why would our intervention now?
I mean, the intervention was Vladimir Lenin was the Western ally. Like, Germany sent him back.
No,
it wasn't even the United States.
It's a little. Well, Germany sent it back, but then there was a Western intervention in Russia on behalf of the anti-communist forces, full of French, British, and like different expeditionary troops that were sent to help the whites. And they failed miserably. They failed miserably due to a lack of support amongst the locals for the movement, the bitter interfighting of the White Army. It failed for a bunch of reasons. But my point to you is Western interventionism in Russia itself does not have the best track record. So the idea that the plan is just collapse Russia, then just waltz in and grab all the nukes, I think it's not necessarily going to work.
Then why are we supporting those neo-Nazis that invading Belgorod? I don't know how to say it, Belgorod.
Why are we supporting them? I think the Ukrainians are supporting them. We're not specifically.
They're having our U.S. military weapons.
They had some U.S. Jeeps and stuff, but we are supporting Ukraine. Ukraine has Russian forces that they are using as a proxy against Russia, and many of those Russian forces, whether it's the Liberty Russian Legion, which is not neo-Nazi, or you're talking about I believe it's like the All Russian Legion. I forget the name of these different groups because I haven't.
One of them is a well-known neo-Nazi.
Yeah, I know. Like one of them's led by well-known neo-Nazis. That is true, but I don't think the purpose of those raids are to destroy Russia. I mean, those groups themselves might want to see a regime change in Russia. The Ukrainian government probably wants to overstretch Russian lines, and so if the Russians have to deal with raids in their territory, that means less troops in Donetsk invading the country. There could be many reasons outside of America is using Russian far-right and anti-Putin groups in order to collapse the Russian government by doing light raids into Belgorod. That's not going to collapse the Russian government.
No, but it shows, though, that this is not... the Ukrainian war is not just, just not about Ukraine, that, they are really, I mean, from actual statespeople.
Do you think the war in Palestine is just about Palestinian liberation? Do you think it's just that's all everybody involved is just interested on the Palestinian side on making sure the Palestinians are free? Do you think that's Iran's main interest?
But for both, I mean, not for both, but for Palestinians, there's a threat to them, right? There's a threat to them.
There's a threat to the Ukrainians as well. A big threat.
No, but you're saying there's no threat to Russia. I'm just saying there's a threat to Russia. Though.
What's the threat to Russia?
I mean, come on, we've seen what these people are saying. They want to do what they did to the Soviet Union
You're right. Those Vietnamese rice farmers are threatening my freedom in Iowa, and we need to go in and take them out. If we don't take out the Viet Cong, then before you know it, Chairman Mao is going to rule in D.C. If we don't, we got to go in there. Ho Chi Minh is going to be taking our hose. He's going to be taking everything. It's going to suck.
Vietnam was nowhere near our neighbor. Like Vietnam was not sending raids.
You're right. Okay, then we can just talk about American interventionism in South America to protect America.
Well, if they were sending raids, I would say so, but nobody's that powerful though in South America to upseat us. They were powerful enough to take away our money, yeah, that's for sure. Like, and we would lose a lot of corporations and their money, like, and our power basis, but nothing like that.
There's no real threat to Russia from Ukraine. In 2014, there was no threat to them. In 2022, there was no threat to them. There maybe was a threat of them being unable to invade Ukraine in the future, depending on their continued developing military quality, which had obviously improved from 2014, or, you know, they wouldn't still be standing. But I don't, what, tell me the threat that Ukraine truly posed to Russia at the start of this invasion, the big invasion. I'll make it easy. 2022. What was the threat?
It's not Ukraine itself. It's the like I said, Ukraine is it's its allies. It's USA. It's NATO.
Okay.
It's the other
so
people.
What was the threat that Ukraine's potential allies and now allies posed in 2022 that necessitated an invasion?
I don't know. They were talking big smack. They were saying that you were going to put.
Wait. I'm sorry. Let me just. Okay. Number one, talking big smack. So I'm just writing this down.
Yeah. Writing big smack that it is for sure that Ukraine would join NATO. I mean, that's what they were saying. Like, you know, like, yeah, for sure, man. Like, Ukraine would join NATO, and yeah,
So that was what. So that's what facilitated. Well, I would say, number one, the big thing that stops me from believing that as the main factor that motivated invasion, maybe a partial factor, would be that the Hungarians would have stopped it, the French would have stopped it, the Germans would have stopped it, the Turks would have stopped it. Wait,
Hungarians don't have a lot of power.
Okay, can you tell me how a country joins NATO?
It gets voted in. I guess that's. I mean,
but how does the voting process? How does the voting process work?
Like, every country has to vote in, and you have to accept it, and then it doesn't have to have internal.
So every country has to approve it then.
Yeah, every country.
Okay, so then Hungary has veto power over Ukraine joining. In fact, today, just this morning, there was a plan in the European Commission to officially endorse the Ukrainian peace formula. And guess who objected and vetoed it? It was the Hungarians. And that's not even NATO, but that shows that the Hungarians are more than willing to use their influence to stop it. And we're just talking about one country. It wasn't just the Hungarians who disapproved of Ukraine joining NATO. The Turks also disapproved, because the Turks have been fence-sitting between the United States and Russia for a very long time, whether it had to do with the S-400 program or any other number of things. The Germans were terrified of provoking the Russians because they had a lot of beneficial, like, energy transfer deals and other stuff, and a lot of, let's just say, historical guilt that I think also impacted the decision-making process. The French were against it for same provocative reasons. They thought it was provocative, etc. There was a general consensus that Ukraine would, A, become more aligned with NATO in certain ways, and B, that Ukraine's inevitable goal is to join NATO, but not everybody was on board just because it got like a thumbs up in theory in 2012.
Do you think today that
or was it 2008?
No, but today. So do you think today is that Ukraine is de facto part of NATO? Yeah.
At this point, I wish if it was de facto part of NATO, then that means that the defense commitments would already be in place, and I wouldn't have to worry about the idea that when this war war's over, that it could just start again, and then I'll have to be here for another 4 or 5 years. Until it has that defense commitment where if a country invades it, NATO has to support it. It can get a lot of support from NATO. It can be one of NATO's biggest allies. But until it has that, it's not de facto part of NATO because it doesn't have that disincentive ensuring its defense, which has been the only guaranteed recipe for sure in Europe to stop a Russian invasion.
Or to start one, but...
What do you mean to start one? What country that's part of NATO has been invaded by Russia?
No, but when Ukraine becomes part of NATO, we're probably going to see World War III. Who knows? But
why? How would? I mean, I assume, and Washington has said this, that they're not going to let Ukraine join during the war because they don't want that. So if they were to join NATO, it would probably be in either some peace agreement, which they agreed that Ukraine would join NATO, or it'd be during peacetime when that factor couldn't be involved. In fact, there was a specific resolution introduced saying that a country at war cannot join NATO, specifically to stop Ukraine from joining NATO during the war. I think this was back during 2014, 2015. If anything, that's signaling in the other direction. The West has been more than willing to indicate its ability to negotiate on the future determinations of like how Ukraine will live and breathe in Europe, but it has never been under the idea of like, well, it has to serve Russian interests. And that's been the main problem from the Russian side. Like there might be like European politicians who want Ukraine in NATO. There certainly are now. And there might be European politicians that want Ukraine in the EU. But ultimately, I think that should be up to them. And I think the Ukrainians have made their decision. And I think their decision is based on their lived experience.
Yeah, but I think it's a dangerous thing. And
I think the dangerous thing is the Russian invasion.
No, look, we survived the Cold War, which was and that's a battlefield for the whole world. Yeah, like the Cold War, like how the whole world's fate and balance between communism and capitalism. That has been decided. America won, capitalism won. Fine. Yeah, and now we're going to throw it all away and blow it all up just because what? Like because of Ukraine? Fuck that, man.
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like Americans talking about Berlin. This sounds like we're going to throw away the world over the Berlin crisis, over Berlin's freedom. Who cares? They're Germans anyway. It was about West Berlin, the Berlin blockade.
What about it? Yeah. So what about it? Yeah, we didn't throw it out. Like,
we didn't because exactly my point exactly. When the Soviets and Khrushchev beat their chest over Berlin, when there was the Berlin blockade, whether it was Harry Truman, whether it was President Kennedy, whether it was any of the administration that followed during the most dangerous time of the Cold War, I think it was what President Johnson called 16 peril-filled years. There was negotiation over the status of West Berlin, but the ultimate American position was that it will not be controlled by the East Germans. It will not be dominated by the Soviets. And the Soviets said, no, we have to negotiate. They've encircled troops around it. They beat their chest, but the Americans held firm and the Soviets backed off. The main argument against defending West Berlin is the exact argument you're making now. We're going to blow up the world over Berlin, over this country that we just fought anyway, over these people that we just like bloodily like manhandled for like 4 years. We're going to blow up the world over West Berlin's freedom. And this was the same time when East Germans, they didn't because we held firm on exactly. That's what we should do with Ukraine. We should hold firm on Ukraine.
No, but like you said, people want to fight.
Your sentiment. Well, did the people of West Berlin want to fight? No, but the people of West Berlin also didn't want to be occupied. And so it was American nuclear power and European power that was able to deter the Russians from invading. And so my argument is that I think that it makes sense to join Ukraine in some organization that can deter them from being invaded. But my main point originally was, if you are against the idea of risking the world over Ukraine, well, then I could easily just say, why should I risk the world over Palestine? Israel has nuclear weapons.
Nobody's risking the world.
Israel has nuclear weapons. Like, what would we do if Israel legitimately, it has 80 nuclear weapons. They say, if you do something on this, we are going to launch one of these nukes at every regional capital in the region. All of our enemies, we're going to launch nukes. We're going to do this. And then who knows what happens? Maybe another power on the other side says, well, if you do that, then we'll counter with our nukes, or counter with a dirty bomb that's quickly developed in some underground lab. I'm sure if the Iranians felt that they were about to be hit with Israeli nukes, they'd race as fast as possible to invest everything they could to get at least a dirty bomb. Like, would you say then? Well, in that scenario, the Palestinian people should be sacrificed for global security.
Good question. Well, my point is that right now, as a state of
my answer is no, by the way. My answer to that is no. I think you should challenge the Israelis in that situation. So I might be more pro-Palestine in this situation than maybe even you. I don't know.
No, but the point is right now, even like Israelis are going hair-brazen. They're starting fights with Iran. They're starting fights over there. Like they even have the what do you call it? I forgot the Samson protocol. I think that's what their nuclear protocol is. And they're bringing in cows from the United States, like red cows, and talking about like demolishing the Dome of the Rock. They're speaking all sorts of crazy shit and like talk about, oh, this is our land. they're already like
okay, we
full gone crazy.
Let me again.
So look, you know,
President Ben,
right now,
Israeli Prime Minister Ben Gvir gets in power, right? Benjamin Netanyahu dies. He eats a walnut and chokes to death, right? It doesn't really matter how he dies. Prime Minister Ben Gvir, he gets up there and he says, if Iran does not immediately stop support for Palestine, we're going to nuke Tehran. We're going to nuke their proxies in Iraq, the Popular Mobilization Forces. We're going to nuke Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. We're going to nuke the Iranian proxies in Syria. We're going to nuke Yemen. We're going to nuke Egypt if they intervene. And if anybody else intervenes, we'll nuke their regional capitals, as well. At this point, way more lives are on the line than just 2 million people. And I'm not trying to say just to degrade them, but you said just Ukraine, and that's 44 million people. And in Gaza, we're talking about 2 million people. Like, now way more lives on the line than just the 2 million people in Gaza. Under the logic that you displayed, under that scenario, the world should not confront Ben Gvir, even if there's a chance or a good chance from just the rationale of if they blow up the world, then they blow up too, that we could probably challenge them and get in Palestine's corner for a just cause. Why can't I also do that for Ukraine? Because unless you do accept the fact that in that situation, we should have abandoned Palestine.
Okay, 2 quick points. Number one, we're not talking about the freedom or independence of Ukraine. We're talking about Ukraine.
Could you answer my hypothetical, and then you could say anything afterwards you want?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to say. That, you know, like, because of the difference. Because number one,
okay, so you don't like the hypothetical.
I would answer you the hypothetical. Okay.
Okay.
Number one is that Ukraine is not occupied, or
it is,
we're not talking about the freedom. Well, right now, yeah, but like before that, it
was occupied in 2014 as well. Yes, it was.
Yeah, but the whole point is that, you know, they're trying to join EU or NATO. So I'm trying to say, like, we're not supposed to blow up the whole world for them to join EU or NATO.
Well, that wasn't how it started, though. It started with the Euromaidan revolution and then became bigger than that because crises escalate. And now it's not just Euromaidan. Now it's Ukraine. Ukraine as an entity even existing is at question. So there's a lot more at stake than just European membership.
Going back to your question. Yeah, number two, going back to your question about Palestine. Well, I think already the Israelis have shown that they're madmen, they're zealots, and so already that we should stop them, because if they continue, sooner or later Israel is going to blow up the world. I like that's right. Either Israel is going to cause the problem of the Third World War,
really?
Or like, probably, I don't know, but like,
well, if that's the case, then I can't stand against Israel at all under your logic, because, like, well, am I supposed to blow up the world over, as, let me put it the way my grandfather would. If my grandfather, let me just say, I disagree with the politics. I'm supposed to blow up the world over a bunch of fucking sand? Like, oh, the Middle East? Like, I've never been in the Middle East. Why? Like, why?
I'm not saying to fight Israel. I'm not saying to fight Israel. I'm just saying that, you know, we're not supposed to. We're supposed to isolate them and not cut down on their military superpower. And you know, no, they don't. Like, you know, same thing with the Soviet Union and America. They don't. That's what I'm asking for. And to have a peaceful solution. I'm not asking for people to you know, like, to make war on Israel.
Well, okay, so if there was a settlement that was like, fine, Palestine could have a state, but they have to give up the Temple Mount, they have to give up Jerusalem, they have to give, like, it's a Trump peace plan then. Like, under that scenario, and I don't know if you've seen Jared Kushner's peace plan. It's not great.
That was nonsense, yeah.
But, yeah. I mean, if it's so would you say that the Palestinians should accept that plan? Because, I mean, if the idea is, in the Ukraine instance, they have to negotiate, or when you say negotiate, I don't know if you just mean accept Russian demands, or fight to a point where they can get the best deal possible. I don't know what you're saying, but...
No, my point is this. Like, my point is that Israel itself, the country, like, that is the problem itself. That would cause, like, the country itself.
Can I just say, you haven't answered my hypothetical. So my question is...
Yeah.
Just like, again, if 44 million people is just Ukraine, right? Then how am I supposed to, in any, like, if we're talking about a scenario with Ben Gvir, or what you just said, that they're going to inevitably blow up the world anyway, then my point's even more pertinent. Why blow up the world over Palestine? 2 million people, which is a lot less more than 44 million, may I remind you. Largest war in the world right now is in Ukraine.
And my point is to that is that there will always be war if that state continues in its due course. So that's the problem that we need to stop them from doing that, because in this due course to begin with, like, it is going off off the what do you call, off the cliff.
So
it's a train going off the cliff.
Okay, so like if we don't confront Israel now, then Israel's going to get emboldened, and now it'll just be a little bit of Gaza or maybe half of Gaza, but later it'll be all of Gaza. They'll keep going, and eventually someone will say no more. But at that point, they will have waved themselves around so much that nobody can really stop them unless they're willing to go to nuclear war. You're saying that by not confronting their territorial expansionism now, we can encourage more of it later and possibly nuclear annihilation, because you need to deter it when it's early, or at least before it gets much worse.
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad we agree about Russia.
Okay. Russia is not the madman, man. They're not messianic like the Israelis, man.
They absolutely are. You just don't know about it. You don't know about the Russian idea. There is a real idea in Russia that Russia is the real defender of Christianity, that its fight, before it was the Enlightenment, now it's maybe more the woke. I mean, his invasion speech of Ukraine was talking about fucking J.K. Rowling. Like, that's bizarre that we're talking about, like, trans issues in an invasion speech of another country. Could you imagine of, like, why am I about to bomb you? Gay school books. Boom, boom, boom. Like, it's ridiculous. But that's, like, they believe that they are fighting the degeneracy, the evil liberalism, and the separation from God in Ukraine. And if you look at Russian propaganda, they'll talk about how they found like a satanic cult in a Ukrainian town and they've now liberated. It's bizarre. And so I will say that the religious element is not emphasized enough, especially since religious minorities in occupied territory get lynched. Evangelicals, Baptists, Protestants. I know a lot of Ukrainian Protestants that were expelled because their churches were burnt to the ground and replaced with military bases. So no, there is a religious angle here, and this idea that they were sent by God. What was it that the head of the Russian Orthodox Church said? If you go to Ukraine and kill Ukrainians and die, you'll go to heaven, I believe is the almost exact quote.
Probably, but I don't think anywhere near like the society. Or
so how do you get more aggressive than a statement? How would you get as more aggressive than the statement? If you go to a country and you kill a country's people, you will go to heaven. Like if I came in here and I said, hey, Ben Gavir just said if you go to Palestine, you kill Palestinians, you go to heaven, you'd be like, whoa, oh my God. See, I'm telling you, these guys are so crazy. They're so radical. But then I tell you that from the Russians, and it's like, oh, well, you know, it's not that bad when you think about it.
Well, when they start when like Israelis see Palestinians as animals, or when they start buying cows, red cows from United States for 500,000 and talk about end of days doomsday stuff, then I'll start believing that. I really gotta ask you. By the way, 20% of Israel's full of Russians. By the way,
like why such the urge to be like? At the end of the day, the Palestinian struggle is much more worthwhile than the Ukrainian struggle. Why such the urge to be like this people being dominated, conquered, hurt, being denied self-determination? They deserve the risk. It's more worthy, the Ukrainian one, which, and again, I hate comparing it, but once you turn it into a contest, okay, where more people are dying, it's much larger. It's been going on for longer than the current wave of violence. Much more people have died and much more people will die in the total, with much more people displaced internationally. I mean, if Putin succeeds in his plan, the Ukrainians will top Palestinians as the largest displaced group in the world. Like, just to be clear, that's going to happen if he succeeds in his most penultimate plans in Ukraine. So I don't understand the purpose here. Because if I like came to you and I said like so many more people are dying in Ukraine, I don't need to care about Palestine. Palestine in the grand scheme of things, to me that's scummy. To me that's like degrading a just cause. Just because we're not in the same trench on the same exact issue right now, like we can only deal with so many issues at the same time. I can't run from war to war to war to war. I can only give my grandmother so much trouble in the heart. You know, I don't want to kill her. So I can only concentrate on so much. Why so much determination to be like, the Israelis are so much worse than the Russians? Why so much determination to, in the eyes of the Ukrainians that are watching, degrading their suffering?
Okay. Well, look, I mean, I asked you that on the first question, and because one of it is a colonial project and the other one is not. So basically, we talked about this last time too, that Ukraine is not a colony of Russia. These were two brotherly nations that are separated right now, because there's so many Ukrainian aristocratic family in the Russian Empire.
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever raped your brother?
No, I'll never rape my brother.
You haven't raped your brother. Have you stolen your brother's children?
I mean, look, brothers fight, brothers kill each other. Those things happen. I'm not denying those things happen. I mean, like we fight our neighbors.
It kind of scares me how you didn't answer that question. So have you kidnapped your brother's children?
No, I didn't look in.
No. Okay. Look. It's brotherly, and like if they are brothers, they're divorced. They're long separated. They hate each other. By the way, and like they're as brothers as much as like the Ukrainians and the Poles are brothers. There's more similarities between the Polish language and the Ukrainian language than there is the Ukrainian language and the Russian language. Like Poles can track their history back to the Polish-Lithuanian. Ukrainians can track a lot of their history back to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, when Kiev was a part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Are they now brotherly nations? If the Poles invaded and made everybody speak Polish, would that not be colonization? Would that not be imperialism? Well, no, that's just brotherly nations. You're just being brotherly. But it's not brotherly to kidnap 15,000 children and deport them illegally to make them believe they're Russian. It's not brotherly to fulfill the largest mass graves in Europe since the Yugoslav genocides. 444 bodies in one city in Izium alone. I've talked to those civilians. It's awful. These aren't brotherly things. And you can call it whatever you want. They're engaging in the repeated behavior that Russia has again and again and again. Whether it was in Kazakhstan, whether it was in the Urals, whether it was in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, engaging in practices that are what colonial powers do. It is the taking of settlers onto land after mass deportations, the killing of the cultural and intellectual elite in Ukraine. I would point towards the executed Renaissance. It is either the use of starvation as a tool of oppression, and then the removal of local identities through boarding schools and the banning of the language. Russia's engaged in these behaviors. Now, you can call it whatever you want. You can call. I'm not really all like we need to have the word genocide. We need to have this word, but those things are evil. Those are evil things to do. Those are things to struggle against. Tyranny is worse than poison. It's worse than poison. And like for me, you can call it whatever you want. Banning someone's language, raping their women, killing them, filling up mass graves, taking their land, saying that if you don't accept Russian citizenship, we're going to take your property. Like this is all like signals and signs and images of what a colonial power does to a colonized power.
Well, I mean, look, I don't see any aristocratic black families in the French Empire, or I don't see any Indian aristocratic family in our empire and the American Empire when it first started as well. I don't see any of that kind of stuff. And then even
let me ask you a question: if I was able to find a difference between Israeli colonialism or other colonialism from different colonialisms, if I could just find differences, can I just say they're not colonialism anymore? Like the idea that Ukraine, because even if your argument is Ukraine. And they had Ukrainian people who did climb the ranks of power in the Soviet Union, which, by the way, that was the Soviet Union.
One of them was the Queen's, what do you call it, like a lover. I mean, what do you want to say about that? Like,
it wasn't colonialism because the Queen banged a Ukraine. Well, this is great. Dog, I'm not racist. You know how many black chicks I've had sex with, dog? I can't be racist. It's impossible. You see, I've had sex with so many black. It is
a little bit hard. Like if you like black women, man, it is pretty hard. Like to say you're a racist if you like black women. If you marry a black woman and have black children with her, right?
By the way, the colonialism is like, wait. You can make this about the immediate and the interpersonal. I think what's much more important is what's underlying and what's significant, which is the policies implemented by the empire. It's the relationship the empire had with the people of Ukraine. You do not ban somebody's language and then tell them they're not the culture that they believe they are, and then teach them other languages, telling them that their native language is dumb and then sending off their kids to boarding school. You don't do this. This is not something brothers do. I don't know if you speak any other languages outside of English. I don't have no clue.
Yeah, I do.
Could you tell me any of those languages?
I speak French.
Are any of those languages tied to your heritage in any way?
I speak Amharic. I speak Arabic as well. Yeah.
If I went to you and I said, you're not allowed to speak Arabic, you have to speak English. You're not allowed to speak Arabic in whatever country your forefathers are from. Like, that's not something brothers do. That's also something that a colonizer definitely, if I'm also bringing settlers with me, would do to a people if they're trying to merge their culture into their own or dominate it with their own. And that's what the Russians tried to do with Ukraine for generations. And that's what they're trying to do now. The Russians deny Ukraine's existence right now.
That's what other European powers too, like the French has done to Corsica. That's what UK has done to Scotland. I don't even know what language they spoke anymore, but or the Welsh. That's what any of those bigger countries have done in the world and in Europe. There's a difference. But there's a difference how Europeans treated one another, which is pretty bad, or like they competed one another. And there's a difference how they treated brown people or or black people or etc. when they colonize them. That's the colonization. So there's a difference. So it's not like
under this logic.
Can I just finish?
Okay, sure, fine.
Arab people fight one another too. Muslim people fight each other too. But there's a difference between the war that happened between the Muslim countries, whether it's the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid, or the Mamluks and the Ottomans, or whatever, or Tamerlane and the Ottomans. There's a difference between those Islamic wars, the inter-Islamic wars, and there's a difference between the wars between Algeria and France. There's a difference between one sees the other one as somewhat like a human, like a Muslim. So they'll give them a certain leeway compared to when the French came into Algeria, or when the Italians came into Libya. Like there's a difference between that, like how they treated those people.
So it's because they're European.
Yeah, of course. Even when this war started.
Okay, so I don't think them being. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, remember when this war started, like MSNBC, CNN, whatever. Oh man, oh my God, I can't believe this is not even a Middle East country. These are white babies. These are blonde hair. You remember that
there were some people who said that, yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That to me doesn't impact if it's colonial or not. If that's the case, then the Russian crushing of the only Buddhist communities in Europe wouldn't be considered colonialism because they're white. So if you go over to a tribe and they're European, I'd have to tell you, it's the largest Buddhist community in Europe. If you look them up, they'll come up. It happened during the Soviet period.
Are you sure they're not like the Turkic people or like the Asiatic people of Russia?
No, I'm talking about the biggest Buddhist community in Europe, and the only reason I know about it is because it was like, oh, Buddhists in Europe, and that's why I'm saying like. But the point is, if they're European, their race doesn't impact whether or not it can be colonialism. Because if you want to go somewhere and you want to take over their culture, eliminate what the people who are native to that area or the people who are from that area's culture, language, replace it with your own settlers, deport the people, replace their homes with your people. What you're engaging in is settler colonialism. That is what you're engaging in. Why would there so if the Ukrainians just had more melanin, would it then be colonialism?
Well, it depends.
That is unbelievably stupid. Really? If they were just in the sun more. Okay, gotcha.
No, that's not what I said. I said there's many factors to it. It's how they treated them as humanly. It's how they intermated with one another. It's how they climb up the noble families. They dance with one another. It's how they see each other as human beings in the same level. For example, right now in Israel, they don't even see the other as a human being. Like there was a story actually from the Haaretz, like one of the leaders. Yeah.
I imagine when you hear somebody say like Palestine, they never even had a country, or like Palestine, aren't they just like a bunch of terrorists? I imagine in your soul that hurts because it's I don't even it's in the thing that hurts me is or imagine would hurt you is you probably put a lot of time and effort into researching that stuff and just seeing how quickly people dismiss the just cause or dismiss something based on just rumor or hearsay they either got from the media or got from report. That stuff is infuriating. And I feel that a lot of times too. And every time you open your mouth about Israel's different. They didn't treat them like human. You don't think I could find you instances of either Russian state media degrading the Ukrainians as cockroaches or animals? Here's a great example. This is a more recent one. It was a few months ago. There was a question about bombing Kharkiv block by block. The city of Kharkiv, a city of about 1 million people. So we're talking about half the population of Gaza right now. So, pretty significant. And there was somebody who said, but, there's people there. The whole point is to liberate the Russians, the Russian speakers, and there are the Russian speakers there. And I think it was who who was, I think it was, fuck, what's his name? Solovyev. I think it was Solovyev who responded, all the good ones left. All the good ones have already left to Russia. The ones that are left are the Banderite, Ukrainianite, like, horrible menace. Like, they get what they deserve. That was the response, because in their mind, all the people who were really Russian, all the good ones, had already left, and the ones that remain are the ones that are allied with the Kiev evil, like, whatever. And when I go, by the way, I think probably you hear similar things about, like, well, these are the ones that elected the government in Hamas. Well, I mean, if you poll them on average, I bet they believe this about Israel. Like, this type of justification of just collective punishment, which is what I'm hearing you describe right now, which is like, we're just going to treat the civilians are basically all Hamas anyway. This is what I see applied towards Ukraine all the time by Russian state media, by the Russian government. I mean, like, this is what's happening right now to Vovchansk. They said they had to go over and take over and bomb it all to create a buffer zone.
I don't want to make your blood boil anymore. It was nice talking to you. Can I just say one last thing before I go? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you said you had fed blood in you. So you outed yourself out on there like that. But I mean, like, you are more for the security class and I guess the proletariat class.
What? I mean, number one, I don't care about I don't give a fuck about your class distinctions. That's the first thing. Second thing, when I say I have fed blood in me, I mean my grandmother was a cook for the federal government, and my grandfather was a machinist for the federal government and a vet. Right now, I also grew up in Maryland, which is surrounded by a bunch of people who work for the federal government because DC's right there. When I say I have fed blood, it means I have been surrounded by feds. I know feds, and so I know how feds think, and so I can. When you said, for example, oh, all the feds want Russia to collapse, I knew immediately that was not true, because I could just call them right now and they tell me, of course not. That's terrifying.
Okay. Anyway, just to let people know, you can find me on Codename Rouge on YouTube, and I do comic books as well. And anyway, it was nice talking to you, Dylan.
Okay.
I don't know, we didn't get along. We didn't agree on everything, but we agreed on certain things.
We agreed on, I think, like one thing. I think that's something. It's more than expected.
Yeah. Okay, I think we agreed on two things, like Palestine and that, that people should get more power, that proletariat should get more power, and that's it. Yeah, and thank you, and have a good night, man. Take it easy.
See you later. Bye-bye.
All right.
Ooh. Ba-da-ba-bow-bow.